Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to be creating some Christmas in July home decor. For my project today, I'm going to be working on this little bucket here. I thrifted this for just $2 and I am going to begin by adding Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in white. So this is going to help block the text that's already on this bucket from coming through my paint layers, and it's also going to help my paint stick. So I did begin painting it and I got to this stage and when I should really look at doing something about that handle so that it doesn't keep affecting my paint job. So I ended up adding some masking tape, as you can see there, to hold it in place. So I'm going to do 2 coats of this primer and let it dry. I'm not too worried about paint getting on the handle, but I will be tidying it up from around the rim. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this. I already have that white primer down, so that definitely saves me another coat of paint. As I said before, I wasn't too worried about getting paint on the handle. I can wipe that off, and I am trying to minimize the paint that's going on around the rim. When that was dry, I took out my Stamperia mold. This is the Cozy Houses design. I will add some links below. You can still get this one. And I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Rapid Casting Resin. I'm going to be pouring out equal parts step 1 and 2 into my silicone cup there. I ended up having to do a couple of pours because I didn't quite have enough of that resin to fill in the houses. I'm going to stir it really well for about 30 seconds and then I'm going to start pouring it into the houses. You can use plaster of Paris for this instead. You could also use clay. I just wanted to do this so that I didn't overwhelm the bucket, make it too heavy. And also I was a little bit worried about not getting the definition that I wanted by using clay in these. So resin was the best choice for me. After about 10 minutes, I started pulling my castings out. I wanted them to still be a little bit flexible because I am going to be molding them to a circular curved surface. So here you can see I'm having a look. Now with this larger one, I did end up using my hairdryer to make it a little bit more flexible. That's something that you can do. You can add a little bit of heat. Here I'm just working out how many I'm going to have on each side. And as I said before, I did decide it wasn't quite bending as much as I wanted. So I took out my hairdryer and I had it on high heat. I had it on there for about a minute per side. And then I went again and started bending it. I was trying to be gentle, not to damage it, but this resin is pretty strong. So here you can see I'm just bending it, and then I am going to be using a combination of Gorilla Super Glue Gel and hot glue. So the super glue gel is that permanent hold, that strong hold. The hot glue is going to be that immediate hold to keep it in place. So once I have a decent amount on there, I'm going to apply it to the surface. I wanted to leave a little bit of room around the bottom. I knew I wanted to come in with some more molds. So I'm just going to continue to repeat that process of adding the super glue and the hot glue on the back of each of the houses. And I'm going to have 3 houses on each side. I'm also going to be leaving a gap between the 2 sides so that I can add in some trees. Now, if you don't have access to this mold, any sort of molds with houses would work for this. You could alternatively use stencils or decoupage paper for a similar result. I then took out this little garland mold here. This is a fondant mold. I will try and find a link to pop that in the description below. I am just pushing my Das air dry clay into the mold, then pushing out that excess. I'm then going to flex it, and then I'm going to flip it over to release my castings. I'm going to be making quite a few of these. I want them to go around the bottom of my project. I did end up adding some of my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to it. I applied it to the surface and then decided it wasn't sitting the way that I wanted. So I ended up rolling out some more of my Das air dry clay, then flattened it so that I could have the garlands be at a similar height or level to the houses. I didn't like how sort of sunken in they looked. I wanted them to be sticking out a little bit more in line with the houses. So I already have glue on my surface here. that Sealy's Quickset wood glue, so I'm just adding a little bit more, and I'm going to add some more of the glue over the top of that so that I can add in that garland that I've already made. I'm then going to be adding the exact same thing, some more of that clay on the other side. I'm actually going to have it wrapping around the entire base. I want it all to be an even height around the outside of that bucket. So I'm just gluing that on now, and then I'm going to begin adding in some more of those garlands. I ended up flipping the garland around so that the pine cones were facing up. I just liked how this looked a little bit more, and as you can see, I'm just adding more of those until I've filled in that bottom section. Once I had those bits glued down, I took out my little Christmas tree fondant mold. Again, I will link it below if I can find those links. I'm going to add some of my Das air dry clay into the larger tree design to begin with, and then I'm going to flex that and pull the casting out. So I always like to use cornstarch in my molds before I add the clay. It definitely helps to release those castings a lot easier. So I'm going to be casting one of each of these Christmas tree molds to go on one side, and then I did end up casting another large tree and another medium tree for the other side, and a bunch of the smaller trees as well. Next, I'm going to add the larger tree in the center of that gap on the side. I'm just popping that little tree trunk behind the garland that we already have glued down. I did have a little bit of a glue spill, that's why that's sitting on that plastic there. So I'm just using that up, I don't want to waste it. And I'm then adding the little medium tree on the right hand side, and then adding some glue to the smaller tree to go on the left hand side. On the other side of the bucket, I'm going to add one of the larger trees. I did have the top of that come off, but it was pretty easily fixed. I just added some more glue to that and popped that back up the top there. And then I added the medium tree on the right-hand side of that. As I said before, I ended up casting quite a few of these smaller trees, and I'm going to be gluing them down and positioning them in between each of the houses. I really thought that this was a nice touch to bring the scene together. I let my castings dry overnight, and then the next day I came in with Paint Couture's British Grey chalk paint and Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to be applying a combination of both of those paint colours. So you can see I'm adding down the British Grey, and then I am blending in some of the white. Ultimately, I really wanted it to look like a sort of grey winter sky in the background, and I felt like these two colours together definitely helped to achieve that. I'm applying my paint in a sort of swirling motion. I don't mind if you're going to be able to see the movement of the paint there, those brush strokes. I am also using my 1-inch pointed synthetic brush there by Capital Crafts, which is from Paint Couture. And I really like to use a round brush when I am working on a project like this. So I'm just working my way around the bucket, painting in that grey sky. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Simply White again, and this time I'm just using that on its own over the top of the houses. This is a chalk paint, so it sticks really well to resin, and I'm also going to be going over the top of the garlands and the trees, just so we have a nice white blank surface to then add in other colours afterwards. So just applying one coat of that over the lower portion of this bucket. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze. I'm going to be going over the top of the sections that we added the white chalk paint. I'm going to be working in sections. This paint is not sealed. I am really wanting to use this glaze to create definition, and it's also going to be colouring the houses. I don't want to go in with multicoloured houses. I want to keep the colour palette a little bit simpler. You definitely could come in and add more colours to these if you prefer a colourful Christmas decoration, but I'm just going in and adding it to the houses first, but I'm also going to be adding it to the garlands and the trees. Once I was finished adding that glaze to the different sections, I then went in and took out a wet wipe, and I'm going to be wiping it back from the high points. Again, this was to create definition on those castings and also to give a warmth. I feel like the glaze reminds me of the glow of a city, of the lights at night time. So I definitely think that it adds a warmth to the project. So I'm just going in, wiping back the glaze from the higher points, and then I'm going to repeat the same process, working in sections to apply that light brown sugar antiquing glaze to the different areas down the bottom, and then pulling it back. I did end up getting some, as you can see, on the grey night sky or evening sky, but I just sort of wiped that back and sort of blended it into the background a little bit. I don't want to carry this all the way up the top. I like how the sky looks at the moment. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Vintage Moss Mineral Paint. I'm going to be going over the top of the trees and the garland sections with this beautiful green. This is a more muted light green. You could definitely come in with a darker sort of pine tree green if you wanted, but I definitely wanted to have a bit of a lighter color palette here. I am using a flatter paintbrush. I don't want to go down into the lower points. I still want to be able to see that glaze that's giving us the definition, but I did want to come in with a little bit of color. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around the bottom section there, adding the vintage moss to the trees and the garlands below. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. You will find it in the description below. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. I let the paint start to dry, and then I went in with a wet wipe to pull some of it back just to lighten it up a little bit, bring back some of those details and show a little bit more of that white underneath. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze. I'm just going to be using this over the top of the pine cones. I felt like they had disappeared a little bit into the rest of the scenery there. So I'm just adding this over the top of those. And I will then be using a wet wipe to pull some of it back. And again, I really do like that sort of layered look. I think it definitely makes a difference. When that was dry, I took out a paper towel and a paintbrush. I'm using it with Simply White, and then I'm going in and dry brushing over the top of the detail. So this is going to hit the high points. It's going to lighten up the color scheme here a little bit, give it a bit more of a wintry feel. I'm offloading quite a lot of paint. I want to be able to layer in that paint. I don't want it to be too heavy. If you preferred it before adding the lighter colors, you could definitely leave this step out if you want a sort of darker look. I'm also going over the top of the houses a little bit just to lighten up some of the areas there. But again, I'm not going for full coverage. This is definitely a subtle look. When that was dry, I took out this little Christmas stencil that I got from a dollar store. I'm going to be just using the snowflakes with Paint Couture's Pearl Crystal Paste. I'm using a palette knife, and I'm going to be working in sections going over the top of these lovely snowflakes. I want to spread them around in the grey sky background there, and so I'm going to be switching between the different snowflake styles. If I found that the stencil was going to overlap anywhere, I did hit the different areas with a hairdryer so that I didn't risk smearing the crystal paste there that I had already put down. For this project, any kind of snowflake stencil would suit. Just have a bit of a think about the scale to see if it's going to fit in. You don't really want it to be too big. It would be a little bit overwhelming. But you could use snowflake molds instead. You could come in with snowflake stamps. There's a lot of different snowflake products out there that you could use instead. And you could switch it up. Instead of using crystal paste, you could use perhaps silver metallic paint instead. really just any sort of thing that you can add that's going to add to that sort of wintry festive feel. I'm so excited to be getting into Christmas in July crafts. Let me know in the comments if you are somebody who likes to do Christmas in July crafts. I think it's the perfect opportunity to get a head start on Christmas crafts or Christmas gifts. It's definitely a fun excuse to get those festive craft supplies out again. Today's project really could be adapted to suit any kind of surface. I could see this to decorate glass jars, and then you could pop a candle inside of it. I could see it on some thick pillar candles. That would be beautiful table centerpiece. So just keep in mind that even if you don't have a bucket or something like this, you can definitely adapt this project to other things that you've probably got lying around your home. When all of my snowflakes were dry, I took out Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. I'm going to be applying this over the top of my entire project. I probably should have done this before I added the crystal paste. It's not going to make much difference. My crystal paste is obviously dry, so I'm not worried about smearing it. Yeah, just keep that in mind if you're going to be layering in some other products, which order you should do them in. I know that I'm going to be adding in some Crust Medium, so I knew I wanted to add the clear coat before I did that. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic. I'm going to be going over the top of just the roof sections at this stage with this beautiful metallic. I'm just following the roof line. I'm using a small artist's brush for this and changing the angle of my paintbrush. You see I'm going a little bit more horizontal in certain areas so that I don't get the bronze on the walls or the windows. I ended up doing 2 coats of the bronze on the roof to get the coverage that I wanted. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Crust Medium, and I'm also going to be using simply white chalk paint. I'm going to be tinting my Crust Medium. I want it to be a brighter white to look like snow, so I'm just mixing in some of that chalk paint. Then I'm running my palette knife over the top of the trees first, dragging that product down, and after I do put the product where I want it to go, I do tend to sort of dab at that medium so that I create little peaks so it doesn't look as flat. It's something I like to do when I'm applying the Crust Medium. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around the project, adding that Crust Medium over the top of the trees, and then I am going to be having it sit underneath the trees, but I do want to leave a little bit of a gap so we can still see that garland, and then a bit later you'll see I do end up adding it then underneath the garland as well. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around the bucket, adding the Crust Medium to the front section of the houses, again sitting on top of the garland so it looks like the snow is sort of piling up as it falls. And I really do love to use this Crust Medium as snow. I think it looks very realistic. However, you could use other products instead. You could probably mix salt wash, a lot of salt wash with chalk paint to create a sort of snowy texture. As you can see here, I'm starting to apply it to the roofs. I didn't want to completely obscure the bronze I already had down though, so I am being mindful not to completely cover it. Being in Australia means we do not get to have a white Christmas, so I love doing wintry, snowy white Christmas projects for the festive season. But obviously, if you do not like a white Christmas look, you could leave the snow step out. I then took out Paint Couture's Sheer Frost German Glass Glitter. I'm sprinkling that over the top of my still wet Crust Medium. The glitter is going to stick into that Crust Medium and it's going to give us a wonderful shimmering snow look. This is one of my favorite things to use on my festive crafts. I have it sitting over the top of a plastic sheet so that I can try and catch some of the glitter that's fallen past. I don't want to waste that. I like to use this one because, as I said, it does look like glittering snow, but you could come in with any kind of glitter that you wanted. I just really love a glittery Christmas personally, so this combined with the crystal paste is just perfect in my opinion. Once that crust medium was dry, I took out Couture's Oyster Pearl Luxe Metallic. I'm going to lightly go over the top of the houses. I don't want to completely cover the light brown sugar. I do really love that tone, but I want to give the houses a little bit more of a shine to make them stick out a little bit more. I'm also running it over the top of the bits of garland that are still visible. And I'm going really lightly again. I don't want too much, but I do want to add a little bit of shine. Once that was dry, I took out Couture's Bronze Luxe Metallic again. I've already removed the masking tape from the sides, and I'm just going to be going over the top of the little sections at the top there. I do have some paint that's overlapping there, but once I have the bronze on there, it's not as noticeable. And I really wanted to bring in some more of the bronze because I do love that color combination. I'm going to be adding that to both of the sides, and I did use a wet wipe to remove the excess paint from the handle. I'm also going around the top rim of the bucket there, but I am using a wet wipe to pull off any of that bronze that gets on the grey background. We have that clear coat down, so I'm able to do that. And here's a look at our finished Christmas bucket. I love how this turned out. The combination of the crust medium and the crystal paste with those sweet little houses, to me, is just perfect. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find a full product list and my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks for watching.